We stand for the gospel. A few weeks ago during the retreat, in answer to a question at some stage, I parenthetically remarked that laughter is a very important part of spirituality and evolution. And somebody said to me, how come we never hear you give a homily on laughter? So today I decided to do it. So I picked a reading from a Gnostic gospel, the Gospel of Philip. And here's what it says. Jesus revealed himself at the Jordan. It was the fullness of the kingdom of heaven. He who was begotten before everything else was begotten in you. He who was anointed in you. He who was redeemed, in turn, redeemed others. As soon as Jesus went down into the water, he came out laughing at everything in the world. Not because he considers it a trifle, but because he was full of contempt for it. Words inspired by God. Two extraordinary geniuses around the year 1890 invented the movies. There were two brothers called the Lumiere Brothers, two French guys. And their father was a photographer with a little business, but the business was failing really, really badly. And so the sons got into it, and they developed much more sophisticated kinds of cameras. And they finally developed a camera that could actually do movies. And the very first movies were just 90 seconds long. So 1895 was the first showing of a movie. It lasted 50 seconds. And then it got better and better, up to 90 seconds, and then 2 minutes. And now we got big, big sagas. So the very, very first movie they showed was a movie of workers leaving their father's factory. Very first movie of all time. And then after a few weeks, they had a public showing of a movie. And what they did was, imagine this is a railway tracks here. And I'm standing in the middle of the railway tracks with this movie camera. And there's a locomotive coming toward me, barreling along at 15 miles an hour. And he showed this to a theatre audience in Paris. Hundreds of people. And there was absolute pandemonium. People began to throw themselves on the floor and rush for the aisles and rush out the front doors. They couldn't comprehend. Somehow, although they knew they were just watching a flat two-dimensional screen, they couldn't not react in panic. There was absolute panic in the theatre. Now imagine you were a time traveller from 2018 and you're sitting up in the balcony and you're watching this mayhem unfold down there. What would you do? You would laugh. Not because you were enjoying the discomfort of people, but because you were thinking, don't they realize this is an illusion? They're reacting to a total fiction? But they didn't realize it, but you would realize it. Now, it's something I think that enlightenment must be something like that. That when you finally wake up, your first reaction is going to laugh from your belly, which is what this first reading is about, and I'll unpack this later on. Your first reaction is, how in God's name could I have been so blind and so fear-filled that I kept reacting to life with fear and with panic? And now I see it for what it really is. And so I really believe that the very first symptom of enlightenment is to be able to laugh, really laugh. So that's what I want to unpack today for a few minutes. I'm going to make 3 main points. Firstly, I'm going to talk about laughter and the soul. And then secondly, laughter and the ego. And then laughter and evolution. And then I'm going to lead us in a short little visualization at the end. So firstly, laughter and the soul. I really, really believe that the very first symptom of enlightenment as it's beginning to occur is laughter. And you watch what happens. As soon as a little infant is born, it's pretty much when it gets over getting slapped in the backside and stuff like that, it starts to smile. Because the little infant is still in contact, 23 hours of the day in contact with Source. It still remembers. So it's smiling because it's still in some senses in the embrace of God. At some stage, this smile begins to morph into laughter as a child learns to surf his imagination, and meet all kinds of extraordinary characters. Because a little child at this stage, she's still in touch with Source. She still remembers Source. And then we do an awful thing to it. We send her to school. and the whole school system and all of society, what it does, it beats the humor out of us and it inculcates us with factoids. And so we laugh less and less and less as we age because we're being indoctrinated into the matrix. And the matrix is nothing to laugh about. Something to be fearful of, but certainly nothing to laugh about. So the education system takes over. So in this extraordinary statement from Philip's gospel today, where Jesus goes down into the water, he's baptized, he comes back up, and he has this huge big belly laugh. And Philip adds, he wasn't laughing at that this was a trifle, that the world was a trifle, but he was filled with contempt for it. I want to unpack that. I think Philip is intentionally using a really strong word to get our attention. It's not that Jesus is filled with contempt for the people who are stuck in the matrix, is that he's filled with incredulity at the matrix itself and that it could really be that effective, that he could have bought into it. He was raised like the rest of us. He was a small boy who was born with a smile and then developed laughter with his imagination and then had to go to school and was told, this is a serious business. You have to learn to be a carpenter and the Romans are in charge here. There's nothing to laugh about. And you've got 613 rules to keep. And so I presume in the life of Jesus as well, the smile disappeared slowly, and the laughter did, and finally there's a serious business of getting down to life, being a carpenter and being a good Jew. And then he's baptized by John in the water. And for whatever reason, the Spirit descends on him, and suddenly his eyes are totally opened, and he sees the world for what it is. A total fiction, totally made up. And from the depths of his being, he begins to laugh. Now, he's not laughing, at not contempt in the sense that he despises it, but that he's, how could I have bought into this for 30 years of my life? And how come all of these soldiers standing around here, how come they have bought into this? So he's filled with contempt for the matrix and for the social hierarchy that's built upon the matrix, because it's the matrix that maintains the social hierarchy, the people in charge and the serfs underneath. And he's filled with contempt for that model and for that fiction. Not that he's filled with contempt for the people who are caught in that system. So the little child, is going from the smile to the laughter to the education to the matrix. And at some stage when you wake up, you realize that the only reality is God. Kaji, where's Kaji? Where's Kaji said? Kaji said it very powerfully there a few minutes ago with the reading. The only reality is God, and the only truth is love. When you wake up, when you begin to wake up, you begin to understand that, not up here, but in the core of your being. That really there is only God, and the only thing that lasts is love. And at that stage, then you're prepared to strap on the seat belts and climb into this roller coaster that we call incarnation, even though your stomach is going to do somersaults at various times of your life, and you're going to be listening to the screams, the ecstatic screams of the terrorized companions on your journey. But in fact, that this too is it's a ride that you signed up for, that you volunteered for, because you're developing maybe courage or compassion or patience or whatever. But at the core of your being, you're completely safe, because you know that there is only God and that there is only love. And that's what precipitates the laughter. So the first laugh of enlightenment is because your eyes have opened up and you've seen what really is. And all of the subsequent laughter is about compassion for people who are still caught in the matrix. So it's not about contempt. It's not about saying, I'm I'm awake and you're not. It's about every single one of us realizing that to the extent that you awaken, to that extent, you need to laugh at the illusion under which you labored, and then laugh away the illusion under which other people are still laboring. So in my opinion, that is why God sends us children. It's why God sends us storytellers. It's why God sends us artists. It's why God sends us dreamers, and it's why God sends us prophets. All of these people are an attempt to wake us up to the matrix so that we can laugh at the illusion under which we've labored. And the whole meaning, for me, a hug is a physicalized laugh. It's a way of reaching out in laughter to somebody else, who's awakening as well, and you're sharing a joke together, or somebody who's floundering in the choppy waters of incarnation, and you're trying to somehow, through osmosis, pass on to them the realization that this is an illusion from which they need to awaken. So hugs for me are just physicalized laughter. So for me, that's the connection between laughter and the soul. That's my first point. My second point then, I want to talk about laughter and the ego. So I think there are two kinds of laughter that come out of the ego. One is really healing and the other is really hurtful. So a lot of humor consists of spotting the inconsistency in a situation. Somebody has said something and it cracks you up, or somebody does something and it cracks you up. There's some kind of an inconsistency there, and somehow you've spotted the inconsistency. And what is that? It is, I think, for the first time ever, you've touched the boundary of the matrix. You're beginning to feel the boundaries of the matrix. There's something inconsistent about this, and you're going to laugh at it. Now, the idea, obviously, would be, and the invitation would be, can I poke through the boundary and see what's outside the matrix? Can I risk going outside the matrix? So much laughter, really helpful laughter, is meeting the boundary, seeing the inconsistency in it, and then laughing at that. So that then is really, really helpful kind of laughter, because even if I don't manage to puncture it completely immediately, I begin to realize that the reality I've been living is basically, it's about fear. Fear is very, very often is the basis on which our reality models are concerned. And all vices come out of fear. Every single vice you can think of is just a different articulation of fear. Whereas every virtue, beginning with compassion, is an articulation of awakening. When you touch the boundary of the matrix and you see the inconsistencies of the system, then you're laughing firstly at the illusion through which you've broken yourself, and then attempting to help others to wake that up. And you start letting go of your fears and inviting other people to let go of their fears as well. So this is the laughter that comes from this, is like the laughter of, you're a parent and you've taken your 2-year-old little daughter to see Santa Claus for the first time. And the little girl is sitting on Santa's lap and she's gazing ecstatically in total wonder at this being. And she knows the story. And you're standing back with your camera and you're taking photographs. And you're cracked up, you're beaming from ear to ear. There may even be a conversation between the two of them and you're listening in very intently and you're laughing your head off. Not because you're kind of thinking this silly little child, but because you're witnessing something which is actually much more real. The Santa the little girl is experiencing is much more real than the kindergarten that she's attending, where she's learning to read or write or whatever she's doing in kindergarten. Because she's in contact with Source at that stage. And this character dressed up in red and white and whatever, he's playing a part in that. It seems like it's a charade to sell more stuff to kids. But in actual fact, it's kids maintaining the connection with who they really, really are. And when you laugh as a parent at that, it's not a derogatory laughter or derisory laughter. Somehow your soul is touched, because even in a way that you don't understand and might not even be able to articulate, you're sensing what the child knows to be true. So that's the laughter, the really healing laughter that comes from the ego. At a societal level, the only effort we've ever made as a society to try to build laughter, as a check in the kind of the system, was the notion of the court jester. There was always a jester in the kingly court. He was the only person in the entire kingdom who was allowed to laugh at the king. Nobody in the kingdom. You laugh at the king, you get your head chopped off. But the court jester, his official position, was to make fun of the king. And this was somehow to bring the guy down to earth, to realize he's not God Almighty. He was the only person that was allowed to do it. So somehow society realized that everybody needs to be able to be laughed at. And I've said this to you before, that any God with whom and at whom you cannot laugh is far too small a God for you. If you're afraid to laugh at your God, if you're a fundamentalist who's afraid to laugh at your God, you got the wrong dude. If you can't laugh with him and at him, you got the wrong God. This is not God. I don't know what else it is. It is not God. So there's the extraordinary, the laughter, the healing laughter that comes from the ego. But there's a downside to it. There's never been any human achievement that we haven't managed to weaponize. And so there's a weaponized laughter. There's the laughter that's used as mockery. There's the laughter that's used as, I hope I'm not mangling this German word, Schadenfreude. Am I getting it right? Schadenfreude. Where you take great glee at the misfortune of somebody else. That's a downside of it. Where you demean another person through your laughter. Probably the most graphic example of all of that for me is, the story it's the third sorrowful mystery of the Rosary, if you play the Rosary. They call the crowning of thorns, where Jesus, having been flogged, 39 times, stripped bare naked, and now they're going to make fun of him. And they get a purple garment, which is kind of the symbol of royalty, and they put it on his shoulders, which are now bleeding and is sticking to his shoulder, and they fashion a crown of thorns and they stick it on his head, and then they bow the knee and start making fun of him. This is the ultimate in laughter. A laughter coming from the ego, which is meant to totally demean everybody else. But we find it used in many, many parts of society in greater or lesser degrees. Unfortunately, sometimes even parents will resort to this kind of mockery in order to keep control of their kids. Sometimes teachers will do it to keep control of a classroom. Certainly it happens in science, where the mavericks, the scientific mavericks, who are way out on the edge and exploring new frontiers, are laughed out of court. Max Planck, the father of quantum mechanics, said one time, "Science changes one funeral at a time." So great ideas, even in science, often kind of met with mockery originally. And certainly religion does it. Religion does it to its prophets. First they mock them, and if that doesn't shut them up, then they kill them. And certainly the status quo does it again and again and again, by trying to shut down great social movements, like in the early 1900s, women's suffrage. You know, they laughed at our court that women would have the right, women voting? Are you serious? You know, our civil rights in the 60s, you know, our women's liberation in our times. So all of these great social movements are laughed out of court. Our abolitionism, that we could survive in this country without having a huge population of slaves. You know, it was laughed out of court. Ridiculous notion. There was even justification for it in the Bible, the story of Canaan and Ham. And so they're laughed out of court. Any great social movement is going to be laughed out of court. So again and again and again, we use this form of laughter in order to keep control. That's my second point. And the third point then, I want to look at the connection between evolution and laughter. So to be very simplistic about it, if I look at evolution of humans just in three great stages, the first stage is very, very definitely fear-based. Our reality model is a model of fear, where, you know, things are going to, lightning is going to strike us from the sky, or earthquakes are going to kill us, or a famine is going to get us, or pestilence is going to get us, or the government is going to get us. There's always somebody to be afraid of. And so very, very often, as we're stuck in this phase of our growth, we oscillate between deep depression and uncontrollable rage. We oscillate between these two pieces, try to deal with the basic fear. And the laughter that comes out of that stage is always the laughter of mockery and the laughter of humiliating somebody else. The only way I can somehow feel superior to anybody, or raise myself from my depression, or exercise my rage, is by humiliating somebody else, you know, or mocking somebody else. So there's the laughter that comes out of stage one of evolution. Stage two of evolution, we're still fear-based, but now it's not an oscillation between, you know, depression and rage. It's an oscillation between, on the one hand, shame and guilt, and on the other hand, religiosity. So somehow we're going to be craven sinners, or we're going to be saved people, and we're part of the special group that's going to be saved. So we oscillate between these two. And at that stage then, we're either going to become, you know, addicts of some kind, eat, drink and be merry for tomorrow you die, or we're going to be totally subservient to some kind of patriarchal religious group. And the laughter that comes from that is different. It's either the laughter of escape, where we're trying to get away from the reality of life, or it's the laughter of self-humiliation. Nobody else needs to do it for us. We're able to do it for ourselves. We're able to humiliate ourselves. So our laughter is either self-humiliating laughter, or it's trying to escape and entertain ourselves from the reality. And then comes at some stage, all of us, if we live enough lifetimes, we're going to break through into the first stages of enlightenment. And this is predicated completely on love. There is no fear in this model. There's only the realization that only God is real. You know, that life, as I keep saying to you, is a dream that the ego is having. And the ego is a dream that the soul is having. And the soul is a dream that spirit is having. And spirit is a dream that source is having. That we are all simply God in drag. And therefore the only reality is love. So at this stage, we're living in serenity within and compassion without. And the laughter that comes from that place is a laughter of liberation. The first laugh liberates you, and all of the subsequent laughters are your attempt to help others to liberate themselves as well. So it's a very, very different model of laughter. So The question I ask myself then, I ask you at this stage, I would say that the best indicator of your state of evolution is to look at your laughter, the frequency of it and the quality of it. Is there a big difference now in your life between how frequently you laugh and how frequently you laughed when you were 5 or 6 or 7? And to ask, why is that? And probably it's because you bought into the matrix, fear-based matrix. So until you get back to realizing that, there won't be much laughter in your life. And I ask you the question, and when you do laugh, what's the quality of the laughter? Is it a laughter that's predicated on compassion for yourself and others? Or is it predicated on, cynicism about life? Is it predicated on an inner wisdom, is coming from an inner wisdom, or is your laughter coming from the fact that you are become disillusioned, with life, and you're just gone cynical and critical? So where is your laughter coming from, and what's the quality of your laughter and the frequency of it? So for a few minutes now, I'd love just to lead us in a little guided visualization to deal with those questions for yourself. So I'm going to invite us to close our eyes and just focus on your breathing. And consciously breathe right down into your diaphragm, down to your belly. And realize that the breath is the interface between spirit and matter. That every time you breathe in, you're actually reconfiguring not just your physiology, but your emotions, your intellect, and your spirituality. So for a few moments now, I want you just to focus on the breath in your nostrils and see if by just attending to it, that you can differentiate the difference in temperature between the in-breath and the out-breath. And you know that when you breathe in, you're taking fresh oxygen into your lungs, which goes across the lung walls into your bloodstream. And then your heart pumps and beats it and sends it all over your body, literally from every hair follicle to your toenails and to your bone marrow. So with the next breath, I want you to imagine this oxygenated, life-giving oxygen going right down to the soles of your feet, to your toes and insteps and ankles and heels. And every place it touches, it brings healing and it brings peace. And every time you breathe out now, you can let go of any discomfort or tension in that part of your body and relax. And with your next in-breath, you feel this healing energy coursing in your calves and your shins and your knees. And every place it touches, it brings healing and it brings peace. And every time you breathe out now, you can let go of any tension or pain in that part of your body and relax a little more deeply. And with your next breath, you feel this healing energy coursing through your thighs and quadriceps and buttocks and pelvic area. And every place it touches, it brings healing and it brings peace. And every time you breathe out now, you can let go of any anxiety or tension or discomfort in that part of your body and relax even more deeply. And with your next breath, you feel your entire torso being healed, all of your inner organs, your rib cage, heart and lungs, liver and kidneys. And every place it touches, it brings healing and it brings peace. And as you breathe out, you can let go of any anxiety or tension or worry residing in that part of you and relax even more deeply. And with your next breath, you feel this healing energy coursing through your shoulders, into your biceps and triceps, down into your elbows, forearms, wrists, hands and fingertips. Touching and soothing and healing. And every time you breathe out now, you can let go of any discomfort or pain or tension in that part of your body and relax a little more deeply. And with the next breath, you feel this healing energy coursing up through your neck, up into your head, touching your chin and your jaw, your mouth, your nostrils, your eyes, your ears, your temples, touching all of the internal organs, your intellect, your imagination, your will, your memories. And every place it touches brings healing and it brings peace. And every time you breathe out now, you can let go of any anxiety or tension or worry, any guilt or shame or fear or anger, and allow yourself to relax completely. And in that relaxed state, I want to take you on a short little journey. I want you to visit the beach of your choice. And you remember that the last time you walked on this beach, it was pockmarked with the footprints of thousands of people. So you had to stumble as you walked. You went into holes or you knocked against hillocks. Now the ocean has washed it completely clean just for you. It's in pristine condition. The sun is just about to rise and you're the only person on the beach. And the waves are lapping gently. So there's a part of the beach which is still being visited by the ocean, and there's a part which is wet and glistening, and there's a part which is damp underfoot, and there's a part which is dry to the touch. I want you to walk wherever you choose, realizing that your footprints are like hieroglyphics, sacred writings. You're imprinting on the beach of your lifetime the story of your future. And the beach is completely deserted, except in the distance you see 3 little children playing, and you approach them. And immediately you feel in your gut that there's something different about these children. They're not just ordinary human children, such as you might meet in a supermarket. You realize at a deep level of you that these 3 children are time travelers who have come from the future. And they've been expecting you. So I want you to sit with those kids and I want you to ask them 2 questions and then make 1 request of them. And the questions are these. Where are you from? And when are you from? And the request, please tell me a story. So for the next 5 minutes, I'm going to remain completely silent. And I want you to sit and listen to the story that these children will tell you. And when you're ready, I want you to hug the kids. And I want you to continue your journey along the beach. I want you to look back at the footprints you've left already and ask yourself the question, am I happy with the story those footprints are telling? Or as I continue on my journey, do I want my footprints to be telling a different story? And as you feel ready, I want you to begin bringing your attention and your awareness back into this room and this time. And when it feels good to you, and just open your eyes. So before we continue with our Eucharist and offer each other the sign of peace, I'd like us just to take 2 minutes out and just go back over the story you just heard, see what you need to do with it.